Welcome to the Husky Hockey Podcast, your number one resource for all things Husky hockey, college hockey, everything fun that's good in the world is right here on this podcast. Weldie sitting along with Andrew. We took a couple of weeks off, non-COVID related issues, just total normal for this time of year. So we're good. We're not depleted. We don't have any wear and tear. We're going to keep chugging along, unlike Michigan, who decided to just up and quit hockey games if they don't feel like they're up to it.
I didn't know that Wolverines were scared of horses.
Considering that the Wolverines barely made it out of Lawson, with the win, they had to get a little bit of luck and good favor and calls on their side for that after getting trounced at home. It makes sense why they would be a little bit scared.
Yeah, and I wonder if is it maybe like Pearson used to coach Tech? It's like, we'll give Tech their game, but we'll cancel. I mean, either that or if maybe if Western Michigan wasn't as hot this year, which one would they have canceled? Because they only got one game in them this week. Apparently.
I mean they can't do anymore. It's so tough. You just have to feel for the small schools like Michigan who have too many good players that are in the World Juniors that they just up and quit like that.
Just really makes you think, and it's tragic.
Yeah,
it was already a great GLI this year, which they sort of gutted that because we need to strip away the tournament, the actual tournament format. And go to campus sites, which the campus sites, shockingly, being the Big Ten schools with Michigan State getting those home games, even though it is a Tech tournament. Like Tech was the team that initially started the GLI 50, 60 years ago or whatever it was. But it was always kind of a way for them to showcase the hockey downstate in Detroit. And from what I've been hearing, it might not ever go back to Detroit. And so it was already sort of on life support this year, and now Michigan goes and does this, which is, I mean, I was, when you showed that to me earlier, I said that should count as a forfeit. I mean, there's no good reason to do this.
Let's hit pause on this really quick, and let's just say, hey, let's go back for our viewers. Our listeners here and just be like, so we're all on the same page, because this actually just broke 5 hours ago, right, or so, just before the pod.
We're breaking news here.
This is what's the Barrero sound effect? Doesn't he have some kind of, or is it Barrero, is it common?
Yeah, you had it right there.
So hot off the wire, hot off the teletype. Michigan Athletic Department released a statement announcing today that the Great Lakes Invitational Contest scheduled for Thursday, December 30th, has been canceled due to health and welfare protocols within the Wolverines program. That's all the statement said, but you go over to the Michigan Daily, which I believe is the student-run periodical for the campus for Michigan, said that the team spokesman told the Daily that playing games on back-to-back nights would create wear and tear on the already depleted roster. The spokesman maintained that the cancellation is not COVID-19 related. Now, it would make sense if this was COVID related, just because, with the Omicron virus or variant, and I mean, NHL right now took a little bit of a hiatus because everything was out of control, and of how much more contagious this strain is. It's it would make sense if it was something where, okay, yeah, you do have 4 or 5, I can't remember how many people playing in the World Juniors, and then you get hit by COVID. Okay, it's that happens, or I guess that's our normal now. But if it's not COVID related and they're just saying, oh, back-to-back games and we already have so many people, we just can't do it. And they are playing the night before, so they're playing Michigan Tech, but the game against Western Michigan, which obviously, I mean, that's what USCHO has, that is the 3 versus 4 tilt. So I mean, that's huge pairwise implications that are kind of at stake here. I did look that, Michigan does hold the 3-1 comparison advantage there, but Western Michigan gets that win. It's 3-2. That's a switch of the RPI. Who knows, what I so there's a thought process that Michigan has a lot more to lose. Maybe I've got a tinfoil hat on. Maybe my conspiracy brain is flowing here, but you just have to kind of raise your eyebrow at this and just be like, this is an incredibly shady thing to do at this juncture of the season where Michigan is effectively just saying, "No, we're good. We don't want to play you because for us, we've got too many good players playing in the World Junior."
You wonder why people don't like the Big Ten hockey conference and this kind of attitude of we'll play one of the games, but not both.
We'll play one of the games against the smaller schools, but not two. We can't. We're too good for that.
Yeah, and I don't think that they should be just. I mean, I could see maybe if they're going to reschedule it. I mean, that still is pretty dirty pool to cancel a game in this manner. But give Western Michigan the game. I don't know. I would be sputtering. I kind of am right now. I'd be really sputtering if I was Furschweiler or anyone involved with the Western Michigan program, because this is a first. I mean, teams play with maybe not 5 guys in the World Juniors, but I mean, North Dakota's going to play games without Sanderson. Teams, St. Cloud played without Paling a couple years ago when he was at the World Juniors. I mean, yeah, 5 guys is a lot, but at the same time,
we've had games without our head coach. I mean, it's
right.
It just doesn't make sense.
And it's not like you don't have the bodies. You're scratching guys. You got practice squad guys. You got a club team. You could bring up some of those guys to play a game for you. I mean,
I don't know if NCAA allows club team to be treated as like AAA baseball players, but I get your point.
I mean, but I'm saying you can replace 5 bodies. Don't tell me that. I mean, St. Cloud with Jack Johnson. I mean, we've got a number of guys that don't get in can't crack the lineup anyway. I would be shocked if Michigan didn't have a couple of guys that have been healthy scratches all year long that you could have plugged in there.
Just does. You're a healthy scratch for Michigan, like one of the more prestigious programs. I mean, asterisk, because so many of their championships were when there were 9 teams in the college hockey, but still, I mean, people will historically have fought really hard to be on that team. You're scratching people with so much talent. I'm pretty sure you're going to be okay. And normal wear and tear for people who are being scratched in and out of the lineup, give them a chance. And effectively, you're robbing them of ice time. I mean, I would be miffed if I was those players.
Yeah, and I mean, the World Juniors goes 2 weeks in its entirety, almost 2 weeks, maybe 10 days, 12 days or something like that. And it ends on the 6th of January, was the final game. Michigan has a weekend series that weekend, Saturday, Sunday, against UMass, which I've been kind of looking forward to that because, and I was also looking forward to this Western Michigan game for the same reasons that Michigan, like the other Big Ten schools, kind of play a crappy non-conference schedule. Bunch of Atlantic hockey teams at home. They just played at Niagara last month, and those kind of games. So it's nice to see a series with defending champion UMass at Yost. Back-to-back series though, and we've seen this before coming off World Juniors. A lot of times those guys coming back, even if it's a couple of days before a series, they'll still leave those guys out just because they've been playing 10 games in 2 weeks or so. So are we going to do this now next week as well, where maybe we got to push that or scrub one of those UMass games? Again, it's a terrible excuse, and I don't really see why they're getting away with not having to forfeit the game. I mean, even with COVID, I was listening to the CHN podcast, and they're kind of saying, does the thing where COVID scratches these games, is that going to, how long is that going to continue? Because they remember, not too long ago, 5-10 years ago, there'd be teams that were ravaged by the flu that had to play a game with 16 guys. Last year in the NCHC tournament, wasn't it Denver and CC as well?
CC. Yeah.
Both of them had, 5-6 guys out, and they played the games. Is it really, does it make that much sense to completely scrub a series for this? That's one debate that you could have. But when they're going out there and saying it has nothing to do with COVID, well, tough, you know what? You either play the game shorthanded or you give the game to Western. If that's more important to you to not play the game, then you give up the pairwise points. I hope this is something that coaches and whatnot talk about at their off-season meetings to not only address what they do with COVID kind of situations like this, not like this, but COVID situations in general, but especially something that's not related to COVID. You can't. This is a terrible precedent. You can't just leave this out there as an option for coaches to say, well, we got a bunch of guys at the World Juniors, so you don't get to play the game today. I think they got to address that. So not happy about this.
And just looked at the rule book here a little bit, so I didn't really get a chance. Maybe next week, when I get a chance to actually look into more details about what constitutes a forfeit, or what has to, be in place for it to be a forfeit, or things like that. But if this is some kind of a loophole that Michigan is exploiting here, yeah, it definitely needs to be closed. Now, we haven't heard anything about, the NCAA pushing any type of rules saying that, this will be a loss for Michigan and a win for Western.
Or play it on a Tuesday in February or something. I mean, it's not like you don't have days in the week to make this game up.
See, now that would even tick me off, I think, a little bit more. It's like, no, we'll play you on our terms when we get all of our best players back. If I was Western, I would tell you to go pound snow.
Yeah, that's a good point. But as you said, I didn't realize. I hate the fact that the head-to-head. You had mentioned that Michigan is up 3-1 in the pairwise comparisons. I hate the fact that they're given a full win there for that overtime win, where that counts evenly. So they're head-to-head right now. Take everything out. Take the common opponents and the RPI out. Just that head-to-head is 1-1, an even 1-1. Whereas Western Michigan beat them in regulation, and then they lost them in overtime. The
3-on-3 gimmick overtime.
Yeah, that needs to be. I know that there's the RPI has a weighting of the overtime, but giving a full win on that is not correct. They need to at least put 0.5 or something in that more accurately, or 0.55 if they really wanted to be accurate. They need to do that. So that annoys me there. And this was an opportunity for Western, as you said, to kind of have a tiebreaker of effect with the head-to-head. At least you're getting a second full win against them. But that opportunity is now gone by the wayside. So, yeah, as you said, it definitely benefits Michigan more than it benefits Western Michigan. And
they're the ones that
it stinks. It stinks.
And, you bring up a good point, too, that, I think people get drifted a little bit by the pairwise, where it's nice to go back and just kind of explain a little bit about how the pairwise really calculates, the number itself, not just the RPI. Because, the RPI is essentially a tiebreaker. It is the
tiebreaker.
Yeah, it is one of the criteria of the three, and then it's the default tiebreaker if the rest are tied. So the other ones are a record against common opponents, and then head-to-head. And the common opponent's record is worth 1 point, and the head-to-head, each game is worth 1 point. And then you count out all those points, and then you win or lose that comparison with that specific team. So you're stacked up against every other team. They compare that way, and then they rank how many teams you beat, essentially, and that's what gives you your pairwise.
And mostly, I mean, the RPI, if you look at the RPI standings, they're pretty damn close to the pairwise. I mean,
yeah.
But pairwise gives you the opportunity, if you win 3 out of 4 against a conference opponent, or you sweep a season series, something like that, you can really hop the standings in the pairwise much more so than if it's just going straight RPI. But for the most part, the RPI is going to give you this roughly the same amount of teams. Maybe the standings are going to be a little bit different, but RPI is mostly what counts. But as you said, there's more to that, and it used to be more complicated too. I mean, there used to be the teams under consideration criterion, the Tuck Cliff.
The Tuck Cliff.
And which they found out after many years that there was a serious flaw in that, where I think it was like I think it was Wisconsin against Anchorage 15 years ago or so, where they were playing in the playoffs. Anchorage wasn't bad. They were decent that year, but CHN was all over this, where I think they went to a third game in the WCHA playoffs, and because Anchorage was right on the cliff on the tuck line, Wisconsin standed to gain more by losing the game, because that would have kept Anchorage as a team under consideration than if they were to beat them. And that's the sign where you have a broken criterion, if you can gain by losing rather than winning. Yeah. And I believe they did win the game. Wisconsin did. It still made the tournament. It wasn't like the difference between them making the tournament or not, but still they worsened their pairwise ranking because of that win.
Because of winning.
So, but it still took them 5-6 years to get rid of the teams under consideration. And I think they also used to have the quality, or did they have the quality win bonus now? It's every few years they'll tweak the formula. Now it seems to be a little streamlined, but as I just said, the overtime loss thing needs to be cleaned up as well.
And I think there's even still a little bit of differences when you look at the pairwise between even publications. I know there was earlier. Obviously, there's still a lot of room for error when you have more, or when you have less games to go off of. But I think a lot of the RPIs were just a little bit off when you were looking at like Us Show or CHN.
And I wonder if that has something to do with the overtime calculation. Maybe one of them doesn't factor it. I wouldn't be shocked, let's say, if Us Show forgot about that and they didn't implement that sort of 55-45 weighting in the overtime games. Not to throw Us Show under the bus, although I just did. But yeah, so there can be some, or maybe they're factoring in, accidentally factoring in shootout wins or something like that. I could see there being some mathematical flaws here and there. So it is getting to the beginning of the new year, though, which means that we can actually look at it for realsies.
For realsies. We can go into a little bit of the pairwise. We were talking about Michigan and World Juniors. We could talk a little bit about Peart, who was added to the team as a late addition, and by the end of the first game, got an assist and was even getting some power play time on the squad. So Peart's going to be out this weekend for against Bemidji. But this is a great tournament, wonderful experience for him, and I think we're kind of all in agreement when it comes to this tournament in general and the exposure and overall what it does for players.
I like it. It seems like every year I'm like, God, I wish I was more into the World Juniors. I don't have the NHL network, which is generally the network that airs the games. So I always feel like a regret of not being able to more closely follow it. That CHN podcast that I mentioned earlier, they had Starman on. He obviously he's a World Junior wonk. So I kind of
he's got a dictionary going. He'll tell you about the Velvet Divorce in pretty much every World Juniors World Juniors the broadcast.
Yeah, so I kind of just let the experts fill me in on the ins and outs of it. Maybe I can see if I can stream a game here and there, or at least the medal round or final round. Seems to be one of those things that Canada is way more into it than the U.S. And being in Canada this year, I'm sure that's going to heighten the atmosphere. we should say too, NHL recently announced that they will not be sending their players to the Olympics, second straight Olympics. So there is a chance that now that the NHLers are out of the Olympics, there's a chance that some NCAA players could get a look for the team. Most likely it's going to be AHLers or players playing in the KHL. I'm guessing that's going to be the bulk of the team are those type of players, but there's a chance. Like, they asked Makar in 2018, he declined. I wouldn't be surprised if the biggest name guys, maybe even some of these Michigan guys, which
there we go.
They might have to cancel some games in February. Who knows? But a guy like Power or a guy like Sanderson could be asked to, some of these first round pick type of talent could be asked to play on the roster. So that's a development. We're not sure. Again, they just announced that last week or so, and the Olympics start in February, so they got to put together a roster somewhat quickly here. So that's a development to keep our eye on if that is going to play any effect in the NCAA season, if there are going to be any players participating there. But that's a possibility, so keep your eye on that.
Yeah, and it's this weird kind of limbo that they had because they were originally going to go, and then there was, well, we don't know with COVID and whatnot, and now it just officially is like, nope, we're not going to allow them to go at all. And they even said including Russia, which I don't know if Russia is still banned for these Olympics, if they're still competing under the Olympic athletes from Russia, not Russia team, which my wife really gets a kick out of when it comes to especially figure skating. It's unfortunate, but what I always really hope for, and this is a little bit off topic, because we never really get to see, best on best, so to speak, when it comes to, talent in hockey. Really the World Juniors is kind of the best we can do at that point, except, some of the top players are playing in the NHL. But
I like the idea of having a World Cup. I just wish that they would just do a World Cup. Don't have any of these, even though they are fun to have that young North America young team. That was a fun thing, but I think the NHL, the owners don't really like the Olympics. Taking 3 weeks off in the middle of the season is inconvenient. Even this time around, it was, after they released the season schedule this year, very shortly thereafter, they're like, well, we do have an alternate schedule that doesn't take the Olympic break. They seemingly weren't 100% committed to going to the Olympics. And it makes sense to have a almost month-long break in your season isn't ideal. So something like an off-season World Cup would make sense. It just they tried that in the 90s, and I said they revamped that again a couple of years ago. Maybe it happens here next year or in the near future, and it's a big success. I hope that it is. But yeah, having an international tournament like this, I think would be great. It's just they never seem to nail that format down. So interesting to see how they approach it next time, or if they are gonna do another Olympic NHLers in the Olympics in 2026. Who knows? So I'm interested to see how that all shakes out.
Yeah. Back to the World Juniors. I absolutely, I love the tenacity. I love the endurance level. I love just how exciting the games can be. I feel like they're all incredibly fast paced, incredibly fun to watch. It's just, burying them on NHL Network. You got to get these games in front of people. I'm surprised that ESPN hasn't stepped up. even putting them on ESPN Plus, it would massively help their outreach to getting people to watch these games and getting the common audience to kind of to get a little bit of flair and a little bit of a taste for incredibly exciting hockey. Because let's face it, the best on best can be sometimes pretty boring because it's mistakes that generate the offensive chances. These players are incredibly talented, but they are still young and prone to making mistakes, which leads to really exciting hockey. And I just wish that they can get that in front of people and what. So, Hope Peart still is able to kind of make a name for himself in this tournament. He's off to a fairly good start, going from a extra defenseman late ad to getting a little bit more time on special teams and whatnot. So it's a great opportunity for him. We'll be without him for the Bemidji series. So let's talk a little bit about Bemidji. Kind of coming into this weekend here. Obviously, we still don't know about Henches and whether or not he's going to be back. Early reports from, oh my gosh, I almost said Motzko. Early reports from Lawson. Lawson, still talking about Western Michigan.
Japers.
Just take over.
Take a breath. Take a breath. Take a deep breath.
Just regroup. I gotta edit. I'll just edit all this out in post so it pretends like I know what I'm talking about. Larson, has said a few weeks ago that he's kind of tailing back or is on track to get back into the lineup for the Bemidji series. So I'm sure that's kind of the main thing I'm able to look forward to here. Yeah, it might be a little bit missed, but the way I think the defenseman has played, so far this year, we've been incredibly deep on that back end. So I don't think it's going to hurt us a little too much. But I mean, this is a non-conference series that St. Cloud has to show up for. It's a home and home. We're in Bemidji on Friday, home on Saturday, and anything less than a sweep, I think is going to make me have a few questions about this team. I don't want to say that Bemidji is incredibly is a big pushover, but just looking at where this team is and where I think this team should be, these are the games that St. Cloud has to win to really cement themselves as a force to be reckoned with throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, I agree. They seem to, I mentioned this in a previous podcast, Bemidji getting away a little bit from their style of extreme, defensive, physical kind of play. They're able to stretch it out a little bit more and go for some more offense. I'm just seeing that, they've had a decent run here so far in their conference play. But playing teams like they just played Bemidji their last series and wasn't very very competitive versus the Mavericks. 5-1 loss, which they were outshot 3-1, a ratio of 3-1, and then they lost the Saturday game 3-1. Shots there 40-17 in favor of Mankato. And, just based on the fact that St. Cloud seemed to match up pretty good against Mankato earlier in the year, we're going to use that math and say that I think that bodes well for the Huskies matching up well against Bemidji in this series. Going up to Bemidji is always tough, and as we mentioned, it's going to be a tough back and forth between a road trip with no travel day in between.
Yeah, just
not
weird.
Not ideal.
And especially, Minnesota just got hit with, northern Minnesota got pummeled with about a foot of snow. Yeah. So I don't know exactly.
Maybe they should cancel.
Yeah,
a lot of wear and tear on the bus.
Wear and tear on the
health
bus.
And safety and mental health of the bus driver.
Too much wear and tear.
Just out of abundance. It's out of an abundance of caution. we could be a little.
But yeah, and like, I also said on the previous podcast, Bemidji's a tough road trip because there's no easy way to get there. I mean,
Right.
it's 2 lanes. I mean, once you get, past Little Falls, maybe a little bit more north than that. But still, it's you feel like you're on the road for about 2 hours, and then you look, there's still 3 to go, and after a foot of snow, it could be worse. It's bizarre to me that it isn't like a Thursday, Saturday, or even a Friday, Sunday series with that day in between. But no, I'm not the scheduler. But Bemidji's got, their scoring is really led from their upperclassmen. Sillinger kind of leading the way on that team. They've got a couple guys that are averaging a point a game. Like you said, they have been a little bit more offensive minded than kind of that trap, kind of stack 3 people in front of the goalie, block shots, and hopefully get a fast break and win 2-1. So
part of that is because they're playing team. They get to play St. Thomas now. Racked up 11 goals against them on a weekend, and so. Yeah, the competition they're playing there isn't the best, but yeah, it's not so much a 2-1 every game, grind it out, 15 shots, and win a game like that. Less of a style of play than that is. Seems like they're playing a goalie platoon. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a different goalie each night. They've been going between Matthias Scholl and Gavin Enright, kind of splitting the work fairly evenly. So it's possible that you could see multiple goalies this weekend for Bemidji. But it's like you said, I think it's a series that St. Cloud matches up favorably against. We hope that it's rest and not rust with this long 3 weeks off. But Bemidji has had the same amount of time off as well, so it kind of evens up the rest for both sides there. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Huskies starting the second half here on a high note. There's second half, very few weekends off. Pretty much, I just think the one weekend off in February till the end of the year, really. And you've got a lot of after this weekend, it's Duluth, you got Denver later in the month, you got North Dakota later in the month. Very few weekends where you're playing a team like Bemidji where you circle that opponent and say that think that we should be able to handle them. So you don't want to drop these games. It's not gonna ruin your season necessarily, but important to make the statement early in the second half here, get off on the right foot as you're easing into the toughest part of your schedule. And so I'm confident, and I'm really expecting or hoping, let's say, that Hinchis is healthy. It's been, when's the last time he played? Was it the Gopher series? It's been at least 2 months, I think. So you'd really hope for this team to make a deep run. You want to be obviously healthy, and Hinchis is a big part of that when the team's going well. So I am really crossing my fingers that he is back this weekend. And with Pert out at the World Juniors, gives the defensive core, someone a chance to step up there in his absence. Zemer, we've seen players like that step up in these situations. The one thing that we've talked about a lot this year is that the defensive depth that the Huskies have is very impressive. So although obviously it'd be great to have Pert there because he's really shown some improvement since the beginning of the year and really kind of coming into his own. I think that the World Juniors will only help his development. So I'm glad that he's getting that experience. But he is one of your better defensemen, so it's not ideal to not have him. But I'm confident that the reinforcements are there, and they're going to relish the opportunity to get some extra ice time. So yeah, let's get out there and let's say like a 4-1, like 5-2 weekend, something like that. I want to see some goals and I want to see some good defense. That's a good recipe, right? Goals and good defense.
Usually that is kind of the key to winning. I would say just have those two things. Last game that Henches played was the first game against Wisconsin.
Okay, yeah. So it hasn't. That was Halloween weekend, I think.
That's the week before Halloween, 22nd. Yeah. So 2 months, without him, and he only played one game also against Mankato. So he's only played 5 games here this season. I don't want to question anybody, but I always wonder about, somebody who's this injury prone and how much is drive, and how much is actually him wanting to be out there, or if he's just kind of going through the motions. I felt like if it was really him just going through the motions, he would have left after last year. So maybe that's not fair for me to say, but it's, I mean, for how often he's on the IR, it's, I don't know, just something that has crossed my mind, and maybe.
And we don't even know what the issue is. I mean, they don't have to tell us. Usually they just cut the body in half and tell us either upper body or lower body. I don't even know if they've said that. I mean, when he's played this year, he's looked very good. Mm-hmm. So it's not like anything is glaring that says, oh yeah, it's definitely his right leg is looking weak or something like that. I don't know. I don't know what the issue is. If it's something concussion related, I'm gonna feel really bad that I just said that. Yeah. So yeah, I'd love to see him back out on the ice. I do feel that adds so much more depth to our forward lines. A little bit of shuffling, but I think, he's somebody that you can kind of plug in on every line and instantly make that line better. So I hope to see him out there. What I'm really looking forward is that I'm just hoping Cronulla is done with all these stupid penalties and he starts, kind of thinking things through a little more level headed, and is able to kind of stay on the ice, because just with how many penalty minutes he's amassed, I mean, he's a player we want on the ice. I don't want him playing a Brodzinski type role. We already have one that's very effective. We don't need him to try to be something that he's not. And then obviously I want Miettinen to do better. So, yep, that's a big one. We've been going back and forth and it's mostly at this point been disappointment with him. I had that one Omaha game. It pretty much stands out as the high watermark for him this year. Mm-hmm. And as someone who was, had a lot of hype coming into this year, he's been disappointing so far. So maybe the second half here is where he really comes to play. I hope so. Because yeah, like I said, it's going to be a grind the second half, and especially if it's injury related with Henches or any of these players, time of getting a lot of rest, a lot of weeks off, that's past us.
That's gone now. Yeah.
And now you're playing, and we see with Michigan. I mean, how much of a grind playing 2 games in a row is.
You're
gonna have to do that. You're gonna have to do that like 10 out of the next 11 weeks. I mean, I don't know how you do it. You're gonna have to maybe send all the players to their fainting couches, because it's such a tough ask to play back-to-back games. But
this comes off the heels as we're talking about the home and home series being, they should have put an extra day in between. I'm gonna get roasted for that.
Yeah, because you don't want your bus going 60 miles an hour and hit a patch of ice and you go into Moose Lake. I mean, at least Mankato and Duluth they're putting a day in between, at least. I think it's a Sartori thing. I bet Sartori's just like, no, F that. We're just doing it back to back. We want to keep it on a Saturday, Sunday schedule. something like
Is Moose Lake, is that on the way? Where is Moose Lake?
I don't know. I've never been to Bemidji, so Moose Lake's up there, right? It's up in the northwestern part of the state. Bemidji Lake. I think that's in Bemidji.
That's where the campus is, right? It's right on Bemidji Lake.
I think you're right.
Okay, it looks like actually all of our Duluth faithful listening is yelling at their podcast right now. It's on 35 going up to Duluth is where Moose Lake is.
Moose Lake is? Oh, what am I thinking of? I'm thinking of Leech Lake. Yeah, Moose Lake is the one that's where like the state prison is. Yeah, that's right. Leech Lake. There's a couple of lakes in Minnesota. I can kind of get them mixed up.
There's one or two.
Get them mixed up.
Or 10,000.
Leech Lake, I think, would be more in the Bemidji area. Don't fact check me on that, though.
You could, yes, it is. Yeah, Leech Lake would be, somewhat on the way, depending on which way you go. And again, which way do you go up there? Do you go up, go to 71 and go up? Do you go up 371? I guess we could have just said the headwaters of the Mississippi. Drive into the Mississippi. Drive across the Mississippi.
There you go.
Did you ever walk across the Mississippi up there?
We did. That's not Bemidji.
No, that's Itasca, but it's.
Well, what city is that? That was weird because Itasca County is not where Lake Itasca is. It's not even close to it, I don't think. I can't remember. I think Lake Itasca is south of Bemidji, maybe an hour or so. But yeah, we did that as some sort of family trip when I was younger. But that's all I remember. We did walk across the Mississippi though.
So let's switch gears here and head out to just kind of thoughts on the rest of the season. We're at the midway point. I know we promised all of our listeners a 16-team prediction. We're gonna push that back to next week. Just with all of our schedules and whatnot, and the holiday, didn't get a chance to.
Any Christmas movie? Do you watch Die Hard?
Oh yeah, we watched Die Hard on, I believe it was Christmas Day. As Teresa and I watched Die Hard.
I didn't watch any Christmas movies this year. Maybe I should have,
but like anybody who says Die Hard's not a Christmas movie, it's.
I only saw it for the first time a couple years ago, and I really liked it.
Same here, and I've always kind of avoided it, and mostly because I don't like Bruce Willis. I haven't, going through a lot of his movies, I haven't really cared. I feel like Bruce Willis, Nicolas Cage, just they don't do it for me. Maybe they do it for some other people, but I wasn't doing it. But when I watched Die Hard, it's obviously Alan Rickman did a fantastic job, and him as the villain, and how he is way different than any other types of villains as well. He isn't the menacing, crazy, off the wall, bombastic. He's a lot more calm, calculated, stick to the plan, until everything does kind of go awry. He was just the whole dynamic and a lot of the nuance also in that movie. It's so good. Just kind of go through then rest of the season, and just if you have predictions or thoughts. Ferschweiler pretty much wrapped up Coach of the Year, I would say, already. If we want to go through awards and whatnot, I don't know. Just kind of off the cuff. But
I think North Dakota's played better than I expected. I'm not going to say that Barry is Coach of the Year or anything, but we, in our previews episode, we were kind of like, they lost a ton of guys. And we were kind of thinking that Driscoll's going to be their stud, and he's kind of been disappointing.
Yeah, he is.
But I mean, they're number one in the conference right now. They've played 2 extra games than the Huskies, and I think a lot of the conference played just 8. So that lead they have is a little deceptive because the game total I guess they play the same amount of games as Western. Both had 10, and they have a 6-point lead on them. But Denver, Duluth, St. Cloud, Omaha, everyone else has just played 8. So, but they have a nice 6-point lead right now on Western. I think it might come down to North Dakota and Denver. Denver also has impressed me. Maybe I'm jumping on Schossman's bandwagon.
Yeah, there you go.
With them. The thing there is North Dakota and Denver don't play each other anymore. They only play the one series, which Dakota swept. That might come in handy for them at the end of the season. Looking at Denver's schedule, looks like they got a little bit of an easier run. They only play St. Cloud once this year. They got 6 games left against Miami and CC. Now, again, they do have to make up some ground, even with the extra game that Dakota's played. But I think it might come down to those two, because we had mentioned
4 games against Omaha. So
which they typically handle them pretty well.
Yeah.
But
I mean, if I can pull it up quickly, I don't feel the recent games between Denver and Omaha have been particularly kind to Omaha.
They won a couple of games last year. I think maybe an overtime win in there. But they went on some like 15-game losing streak against them not too long ago, a few years ago. Denver has dominated the series.
A lot of 2016, 17, 18, 19, and it wasn't until 2021 where they had a win. So they went through many years without a win.
And I'm pretty sure at least last year, 1 or 2 of their wins were in overtime.
One was in overtime, 5-4 overtime. Their other win was a 5-2.
So I like Denver and Dakota for the duking it out for the Penrose. As we mentioned, Western goes through that just gauntlet of a schedule coming up here. With this is all in a row: Dakota, Duluth, St. Cloud, Denver, Dakota. And all in a 7-week stretch, 6 or 7 stretch. So they're gonna really, if they win the Penrose, they're gonna earn it. That's for sure. And maybe they get a bit of a break, not having to play Michigan, getting to kind of rest up and fire at the rest of the conference with all cylinders, not having to play the best team ever. At Michigan, but they're kind of, and maybe this is unfair to them, but they haven't really proven to be the kind of team, especially in the second half of the year, to continue on and make a stretch run like this. And they've hosted a couple of first round series in the league, but not too many, and I don't think they've been higher than 4th. So, just as history would show us, they've got to break that trend in order to really prove it. And they look very good this year. Obviously, they've been very impressive. But they're a team that still is not quite on that level of the perennial powerhouses. So maybe this year is the year that they change that. But I'm going to stick with that Dakota Denver kind of twosome battling it out, and maybe I'm sleeping on the Huskies, but I would have felt a lot better their chances of winning Penrose if they would have beaten Dakota that Saturday game. They would have completed that sweep. That would have been huge.
Yeah,
they've really got to either do something like that, go up to Grand Forks and sweep them, or go out to Denver and sweep them, and that's not an easy task. So that's... Yeah, and they only play one. St. Cloud only plays one series against Miami this year. They've got one more series against CC, so home series against both those teams in the second half. But save for that, pretty tough schedule down the stretch. So, and I think the Huskies are going to make the tournament, which that's what I'm mostly concerned. That's what I mostly am concerned about. But as far as, they still got to prove something to me to make me believe that they can make a deep run in the postseason.
Looking at the schedule here for Western Michigan, they they had the series against Omaha on the 10th and the 11th here of December, where they did split. Then they have one game against Michigan State. That's on Wednesday, and then they don't play until CC on the 14th, 15th. So that's 7th and 8th weekend there. That's they've got that off. So that's where they definitely get the rest before they kind of run into that gauntlet, like you said. After that CC series where it's.
I think you missed one. Says here that December 30th they're playing at Michigan.
No.
That's not happening.
That's not happening.
No. I don't know. Maybe we could talk about that. Maybe that next week's podcast we could talk about that.
We could talk about that. See if maybe they did a JK LOL and whatnot. So I agree with your assessment, and I agree that I'm a little more inclined to say Denver is going to be kind of the team that's going to reign supreme at the end. I think they're just they're playing too well, and they have less question marks, I believe, than North Dakota does. Driscoll has been disappointing for them. I don't see him turning it around, and I think as the games kind of wear on, and he's going to be leaned on a little bit more, and I don't think he's going to rise to the occasion. And that's where I think Denver's going to be able to kind of pull away. And I'm excited to see what Western Michigan does as far as teams that are not St. Cloud State. But it's interesting also that both of us are kind of meh on Duluth, and where we don't really see them at least vying for a Penrose. Obviously, when it comes to tournament time,
they don't win Penroses. They win national titles. So I expect them to be third or fourth in the conference, and then probably be in the Frozen Four. You can probably book it right now.
Yeah, and that's where it's kind of interesting. Where that might be. I mean, that would be a fun series if it's Minnesota Duluth, St. Cloud State. As a trip on the line to the Frozen Face-Off. But that's kind of where I'm looking at things shaping up right now, and whether it's here, it's at St. Cloud, or if it's at Amsoil, but that's going to be a real slugfest when it comes.
Still think too that there's, and we'll get into this next week when we predict the field, NCAA field, but I still think there's going to be 5 teams in the conference.
I agree.
To make the NCAAs, which means that someone is losing in the first round of the playoffs and still making the tournament. And so, which is certainly possible. The conference has gotten in 6 teams before, which means that 2 teams lost their playoff series and still made the tournament. So I definitely would. And so, yeah, who's ever going to be that 4-5 series, that might have a lot of implications, not only with Frozen Face-Off, but also NCAA jockeying. Then you got Omaha too. We're both sleeping on them, and I think they're the 6th team out of that group. The team that's going to be outside looking in. That Western game that they won, 1-0 game on Saturday at Western's, big win for them, because it's I would say their biggest win this year from a pairwise RPI perspective. Certainly possible. I mean, if the season's over now, I guess, yeah, it's not the 30th, not January 1st yet, but right now they're in pairwise position to make the tournament. So they certainly are a possibility to make the tournament. But in the same sense as Western, Omaha is one of those programs that just hasn't done enough to convince me that they're a proven product. And when the Huskies played them, even though they lost that Saturday game in overtime, right? We're being ranty about that. I was not terribly surprised, and I know that they weren't at full health for that series, but I wasn't terribly impressed with them. So, we'll see. It's going to be a very interesting second half, because as the teams that we said, let's say the top 5 teams, I guess I would be surprised if the Huskies were to win the Penrose, but not terribly surprised. I mean, any one of those top 5 teams, you jumble them up in any sort of order, and it wouldn't really surprise me very much. So,
if the Huskies win the pairwise, I'd be really.
They're gonna have to go. Yeah, they would have to go on a serious run. But right now they're at 7.
Yetnin would have to heat up. Cronulla would need to stop taking stupid penalties, and Henches would need to play.
Those things can happen. I mean, that's not totally out of the ordinary. It's certainly possible, but they're at 7 in pairwise right now. Huskies are, and that's where they were last year come tournament time. And so maybe that's a good little honey hole for them. Good spot in the pairwise for them to sit at.
Good omen.
Not be the number one, not be a number 1 seed. We know how that goes with the Huskies. But
how do you be the number 1 seed a couple of times and they never let you forget it?
0-3 as a number 1 seed in the tournament, because we can't forget about the Ferris-Safford State game, even though they weren't number 1 overall that year. As that number 2 seed, a little sneaky number 2, I like their chances better, I guess. But I just excited to see some good hockey.
Yeah, for Omaha, I think it's going to really be dependent on Chase Primo if he's healthy, whether or not they can slide into that number 4 slot in the conference.
And they're goaltending too. I mean, watched that Western series, and Seville looked very beatable on Friday, but then pitched a shutout on Saturday. So kind of be a Jekyll and Hyde character.
He's so streaky.
And as we said, we've seen good things out of Roden, and they've given him some more starts, but it's still clearly Seville's job to lose. So I mean, a lot of times you go as far as your goalie does, and it's possible that he stands his head for a couple of months, and they make a run into tournament position.
What's the saying? Show me a good goalie, and I'll show you a good coach, I think is the saying. That's kind of what it comes down to. So, I think actually any of the questions that we had were actually already addressed.
Did we want to mention? I know we talked earlier before the show that it's about a month old now, but Commissioner Josh Fenton, NCHC Commissioner Fenton,
right,
did announce his leave at the end of the year. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to be the conference commissioner of the Summit League.
Yep.
Which is a full D1 all sports conference, which includes North Dakota, Denver, Omaha in the NCHC, and then also St. Thomas. That's where St. Thomas is playing basketball and a lot of their other sport, volleyball, I think. And they're not. It's not their
pretty
football
much.
conference.
Yeah, pretty much all their main sports except football.
Summit League is not a football league. They don't have football.
No,
but
although
basketball,
those teams usually play if they do have football, because Omaha doesn't have football. I don't think
Denver does not. Nope.
So
Dakota does.
Yeah, they play in the Missouri Valley.
Okay.
Football conference. That's where like North Dakota State, North Dakota, South Dakota State. Yeah, and obviously with that came a lot of rumors I saw on Twitter. People speculating, what does that mean for the history of hockey? Does that mean more conference reshuffling with, some more of the Summit teams adding hockey, so and whatnot. I don't like to speculate on any type of conference or realignments or BS or whisperings or anything like that. I don't feel like I'm in the know, and I've already been through all that crap once. So it's Fenton has done I think a wonderful job overall with the conference. He was kind of brought in as, he wasn't the founder of the conference, or he wasn't the first.
Well, he was not the first commissioner.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting, people probably forget that. The first guy they hired, Jim Shear, I think was his name. He was a guy that worked for the Olympic Committee. That's how he got the job, and he quit before they actually started playing hockey in the conference. I think he was there for the first year. Founded the conference in the summer of 2011. I think they hired him like beginning of 2012. And then he he was done before 2013 started, and the conference officially launched in the fall of 2013. So Fenton was hired somewhere late 2012, early 2013 as a guy from Miami. He was like their assistant AD, and didn't really know much about him. And knowing that conference had already gone through one commissioner before they even started play was kind of an inauspicious position to take. It's always kind of weird. It's tough to what do you judge a conference commissioner as? How do you judge their tenure, and what's their main role? And I think his main role, in general, the at least the hockey conference commissioners in college hockey is be a cheerleader for the conference, and importantly, I think Fenton will probably point to the national TV package, getting that lined up with CBS Sports Network.
Because if you ever want your first period to be bumped by an overtime basketball game,
and probably one of those Missouri Valley hotly contested matchups, we can make jokes. CBS Sports Network isn't CBS, let's say, or ESPN or something like that. But from what it was, I mean, remember in 2013, and also the NCHC TV, which was pretty revolutionary at the time, if you remember. I mean, we've since had this Flow Hockey come up, and ESPN Plus is now doing ECAC games. But I mean, we've talked about this. I remember 10 years ago, WCHA days, going on schools' websites and paying $10 a pop for a game to stream a choppy, who knows what kind of quality video you were getting in those days. So being able to, launch a service like the NCHC TV, which now has some copycats in other leagues, I think that's a big feather in his cap. So as far as like who's going to take over, I mean, it generally goes to like ADs or people in the athletic departments of certain schools. I have no idea who's going to take over, but you got to think the next guy is going to probably preside over a next sort of run of either expansion of the conference or shuffling. I mean, we've always heard rumors of Western and Miami are kind of these outliers in the conference, and people are saying that the CCHA might work better for them geographically. I know that sounds like Western is more happy in the NCHC than Miami is. We don't know if those are going to be a package deal. What's going to happen to Arizona State?
There's just too many things for me to even wrap my head around to speculate.
We got programs like Augustana, which are coming in. What happens with them? And
you never know about Illinois.
Illinois,
that one hockey Twitter account has been peddling Illinois for about 10 years and trying to sell it still. And
I mean, even here in Tucson, the University of Arizona just announced that they're getting a 3,000 seat arena on campus for U of A, and they're a very popular club team. I want to check them out sometime. And they've won some national titles at the D1 club level. You got a built-in rival with Arizona State moving into their new complex next year.
Well, and then also we saw, I don't know if you saw, but UNLV tweeted out.
That's been a rumor for some years now too.
Yeah, they actually tweeted out something big is coming with a hockey stick. So
really?
Yeah. So that's
so you have these potential dominoes,
which was always kind of the hope, I would guess, when Arizona State came in, is that you would get a lot of these other schools kind of in this area to kind of pop up with hockey teams to get some more traction and obviously grow the game, because that's
I hope Arizona. I mean, there's if you have a 3,000 seat arena, that's basically what CC built. I mean, 3,000 seat arena is, that's a bunch of buildings out east most of the Atlantic hockey schools have smaller rinks than that. And so, if they can look at Arizona State and say, we can make that fly as much as they did, having a lot of travel from their perspective and no conference, having that as a package deal might make it easier for certain conferences to get in. For some reason, with Arizona State, they played at the Big Ten last year for the COVID year. For me, it seems like that probably is the most logical place for them, even though I hate saying that, because even with the Big Ten getting Notre Dame in, that showed it very clearly that the Big Ten Hockey Conference was a mistake. The whole point was, we want our own conference. Well, then you don't add affiliate numbers at that point. And so I thought that was a sign of the failure of that conference. If you need to throw a bone to other non-Big Ten members, and I know Notre Dame is its own. They're a unique little precious bunny that everybody wants because they're Notre Dame. So maybe it's a unique case, but from the standpoint of the NCHC, I think the one thing that they
not even their college football coach likes Notre Dame.
Yeah, that's true, and he'll affect a Southern accent whenever he bolts for sunnier pastures. But the NCHC, they like to say that the conference is built of members where hockey is the number one school. I think you could say that about everybody except those two MAC schools, Western and Miami, who they both made bowl games this year as football programs, and you can make jokes about the MAC, but it's not the same as North Dakota. Definitely, hockey is the number one sport there. St. Cloud the same. Denver, okay, they won a national title in lacrosse in the last few years, but I would like to think that hockey is traditionally their number one sport. CC, obviously, it's the only sport they play at the D1 level. And so having schools like Arizona State, where hockey is definitely not the number one school, doesn't seem to mesh so well with the conference vision, if that is the vision, with the NCHC, where I think that fits better in the Big Ten, where all those schools know that it's their football and hockey is king, and hockey is at best the third biggest men's sport on campus. So from a hockey importance standpoint, it feels like they make the most sense there. Plus, like I said, they had the trial run last year, and I don't think that they would have been so willing to do that if they weren't also willing to entertain the fact of them being a full hockey member at some point. Again, if something like Arizona comes along and University of Arizona comes along and announces that they're going to go D1 too, then you really start to get some momentum as far as a true Western league. I mean, we haven't even mentioned. I mean, Alaska Anchorage is coming back next year. Who knows how long that is going to last? Robert Morris just announced that they're officially coming back, which I think is in 2023. I don't think it's next year, but I think it's in 2023. Again, who knows how long that's going to last? Huntsville said that it's raised the money to come back, but that they're not going to make that official until they get into a conference, which they've basically tried to get into every conference they can, and everyone said no thanks. So who knows if that's going to be a thing. So it feels like there is another stream of dominoes coming here, where it could all just be reshuffled again.
Yeah.
Which I don't think would be very good for the sport. I think stability is best. But as far as adding teams here and there, going from the NCHC an 8-team team to a 10-team league might make some sense. So whoever is going to be the new commish, not only did I think Fenton lay a good groundwork for whoever's going to come next, the next guy is going to have to, make some tough decisions as well, and also keep the momentum going. Yeah. The conference has been going so well as far as from a national success standpoint, national titles, and then You got the TV deals, the streaming package, and all this kind of stuff. Well, that's not guaranteed. So I wish them good luck, whoever it is that's going to come on next. But we did want to mention that because that's somewhat old news. I think it's about a month ago that he announced that. But yeah, maybe that's another off-season kind of topic of what's going to happen with the conference in the future. And once we hear of who is hired to that position, I guess we can comment on it then. But we did want to throw that out there before we left.
Jeff Finger for commissioner. That's my pick.
Yeah, there you go. I like that. Commissioner Finger.
Last question that I've got for you that I'm thinking about it here. One game, Bemidji, 6:07 time is when the puck drop is on Friday. Are you paying a month of Flow Sports? Are you going to watch it?
I was thinking about that recently. I don't think so. I think I'm just going to listen to it. $30 for one game. Something. Maybe, is it 6? Yeah, it is 6:00.
Yeah, it's 6 o'clock.
Earlier start, too.
That's actually kind of my thought process about it. And it's, I've got, 3 kids, a 4, and a set of twins. That's running right up to bedtime. And Andrew and I, a little bit of inside information here is, we're normally not able to get together at the podcast until 8:30 because, my daughter Clara likes to, take her time going to bed. Sometimes she busts in on the conversation. Indeed, comes in, says, "Daddy, what are you doing? Can I play with the microphone? Will you go to bed?" But it's so, if it was a 7:30 start, maybe my wife could take over bedtime with Clara, could put the twins down, I could be able to watch it. But 6 o'clock, game's halfway over, so I don't know if I could justify, $30 for half the game on Friday. So I'm probably going to be a no-go for me, which is, kind of feel like a missed opportunity for Full Sports. You try to get them for only a 1 month and still try to say, oh, look at all the other great content that you can watch. But I mean, the long and short of it is you care about your teams. I mean, that's kind of, maybe you'll peer in a little bit, but
I'd pay $10 for one game. I'd probably pay $15 for one game.
Yeah.
But $30 is a little tricky. So if you make a 1-day pass, 24-hour pass for $10, name your price. Like I said, I'd pay probably up to $15. 30's a little pushing it. We'll see. I might go ahead and do that, but I doubt it. And I've liked what I've heard from my
KVSC.
boy Tyson. Yeah, and so I hope that maybe they're doing the game, and I can put my faith in them, and they can provide the entertainment for the night.
Sure.
So,
fair thing. No, I'm right with you on that one. I'll probably listen in as well. So I can listen into the earbuds when I'm putting them down. So when Cornella takes a bad penalty, and I can try to swear under my breath while Claire's not listening. So
freaking.
Well, that about does her. So thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. And we'll hopefully talk about a Husky sweep. And so that's it. Until next time, go Huskies. Woo!